Good morning, good morning. How you guys doing? You guys good? You good? Yeah. Yo, looking forward to diving into the word this morning. If you guys can go ahead and take your seats. We are looking forward again to the word this morning. We want to get you a Bible. If you do not have a Bible with you, just raise your hands. We want to get a Bible into your hands. Just hold your hands, keep them raised. And go ahead and turn to Hebrews chapter 6 as we continue on in our series through the book of Hebrews called Unshakeable. So turn to Hebrews chapter 6. We're going to be in verses 13 through 20. So let me make a couple of announcements while you guys are getting over there. For a couple of things that are coming out that are super excited that we want to get on your radar. One of those things is if you have been fellowshipping over here and you call this place home and you've been through the whole transition from redemption to beloved and everything else, and you're like, yo, what's going on and what are they doing and stuff? We've been praying, we've been working and formulating everything, and we landed on a membership packet that we feel reflects who we are, and we want to share it with the family. So on Wednesday, if you already considered this place your home and you've been fellowshipping here and we want to come through and learn a little bit about what this new membership package look like and stuff and re-sign up and everything, this Wednesday at 6:30 we're going to be fellowshipping over here and chilling as a family. This isn't an extended membership class. That'll be in January where we'll slow down and go do a deeper dive on some themes. But if for you, you're like, yo man, I'm good, I want you to come through, and if you want to do both, come through. So that's this Wednesday. And then on this Saturday, the brothers are getting, right, hold on, brothers in the room, let me see you stand up. Yeah, let me see you stand up. All right, you brothers that fronted just now, y'all need to stand up too. All right, I'm gonna see you after church. All right, there we go. Hey, yo, this Saturday, the brothers are getting together. We're fellowshipping, we're breaking bread together, we're diving inside of the word, and we want to build a strong unity amongst the brothers inside of this church, so we stand together against the wiles of this world and stuff by building deep unity and fellowship with each other. So we're doing brunch this Saturday at 9 a.m. So come fellowship with us, break bread with us. We're going to be praying, reading, and fellowshipping. And then worship through the arts is going to be on the 29th of October, 2 days before Halloween. This is a time that we do a worship service that's all crafted around different forms of art with a united theme. And our theme this year is going to be what we've been preaching through, the unshakable kingdom. So there's still time to sign up if you want to be a part of it, or if you just want to come and worship with us. Come out, worship with us. That's worship through the arts. That being said, I want to get into our word this morning. Am I good in the microphones or? All right. I feel like it keeps feeding back. Last week, Pastor Aaron, if you want to write notes, the title of this particular sermon is very important, is Anchored in the Deep. Anchored in the Deep. Last week, Pastor Aaron, he was preaching through Hebrews chapter 6, verses 4 through 12. And as he was preaching through Hebrews chapter 6, verses 4 through 12, if you was in the room or you just back up and read through those texts yourself, it was a very sobering passage of Scripture. Very sobering passage of Scripture. We heard one of the strongest warnings in Scripture in and of itself. We're hearing, and Pastor Aaron is preaching, and as he's preaching and reading through the text, it's as if the text was just slapping you back and forth, like falling away. Psh, impossible restoration. Psh, I don't want that to be me. Barren land, bearing no fruit, only fit to be burned. And I'm here and I'm listening. I'm in the front row, right? So I'm like, go ahead and preach, Aaron. But I'm listening to y'all. And there was moments when you could feel the tension in the room. It was like you could feel a pin, you can hear a pin drop. People processing. Well, is that me? Or what does that mean? Or what is... And he continues to read. He continues to preach. And as he continues to read and flow through the book of Hebrews, the author of Hebrews, he starts to pivot. He starts to pivot and he says, even though we speak like this, beloved, we are convinced of better things in your case. Things that belong to salvation. As we dive in this morning, I wanted to make sure that we see what Hebrews is doing. We see what the Lord wants us to take inside of this moment, inside of this text. The warning is real. And at the exact same time, so is the witness of God's grace inside of their life real. Yes, those consequences they're real, and at the same time, you are really safe in him. You are secured inside of his kingdom. And he said, I know this. How do I know this? I see the fruit. I see the fruit of salvation in you. And then to anchor their hope, he reminds them about who God is. By the way, he's just. That's just who he is. He's just. He does this because our assurance rests on who he is. Not on what we can do, not on what we can accomplish, not our situations, not our circumstances, but who he is. And to that end, he wants to remind them he's just. He's just. If God is just, do the math. If God is just, he can't forget the work that he's begun inside of you. It'll conflict with his just nature. See, Hebrews wants the nature of who Christ is to produce an assurance inside of us that is so full, so steady, that it carries us all the way to the very end. That it carries us. It carries us through the pain of living inside of a fallen world in all the way that it touched us in all the areas of our lives. That it will carry us through the fear of bearing witness during a time when our religion is being hijacked by empire and nation worship. That it will carry us through the storms of cultural wars, religious wars, personal wars, wars inside of your family, wars inside of your finances. It'll carry you through. That when we rest in the nature of the one we've placed our hope in, it would produce one of the biggest markers of faith, which is perseverance. That patient endurance. It will produce this fruit, that patient endurance. It's a marker of maturity in the life of the believer. Not that you've never stumbled, but that you've endured. Every time you stumbled, you've endured and you got up. Even if you was out of pocket for a minute, but you always end up back going through it. You've endured. That after all the dust settles, all the noise fades away, you're still abiding in him and he is abiding in you. And that's when you look and you realize with open eyes, he was keeping you the whole time. Even when you was kicking and screaming, and all he did was hold you tighter. And he kept holding you. And as he kept holding you, the kicking and the screaming eventually dies, and the only thing that is left is trust. But therein lies the problem. One of the greatest struggles of being human is trust. The fall has discipled us in distrust. The fall has. We've all lived inside of it. We've been baptized in the ways and rhythms of suspicion. That's us. We've been baptized in it. We know it well. We've been raised in a culture of insecurity. So when someone reassures us of something good in our soul, we are still concerned of something bad. I know you said that's something good there. But right here, I'm still concerned. When God promises, I will bless you, we still ask, but what if you don't? I know you said, but what if you actually don't, though? What about the worst case scenario? What if that happens? How can I be sure? I know you said it, but how? Why? Because deep in our heart of hearts, we are acutely aware of our finite nature. That disconnected from the infinite reality of our God, we are left with human frailty. We know this when we are more distant from Him. We feel it. And because of this reality, our souls are always crying out for security. It's because something was broken. The writer of Hebrews knows this. He sees this. And he's encouraging them. He wants to root our hope in something deeper than fear. Something deeper than what our eyes can actually see. Because sometimes when your eyes don't see it, that's when the crumbling happens. But he wants to root you in something deeper. Not in feelings, not in circumstances, but in the unchanging nature of God Himself. He wants us to be anchored in the deep. I want to read the text this morning with you. I'm going to ask you to stand with me. We're going to be in Hebrews chapter 6, verses 13 through 20. I'm going to read it, and then we're going to chew on it some. Go ahead and open your Bibles there. I won't put this on the screen until we go through it. Starting at verse 13. When God made His promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself, saying, I will surely bless you and give you many descendants. And so, after waiting patiently, Abraham received what was promised. People swear by something greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to the arguments. Because God wanted to make the unchangeable nature of His purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, He confirmed it with an oath. God did this so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled to take hold of the hope set before us may be greatly encouraged. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain, where our forerunner Jesus has entered on our behalf. He has become a high priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. So as I started off talking about humanity's issues with trust. And as we go into this, we're starting off talking about Abraham's struggle with trust. You see, we're now talking about Abraham as we're going through Hebrews, but first we was talking about Moses a few minutes ago. The reason now we're going to Abraham is because Moses was only continuing what God was doing with Abraham. He was only continuing on in a different process. In Genesis chapter 12, God tells Abram to leave his homeland for a land that He'd show him, promising to make him a great nation and bless all the peoples through him. He tells him to do that. Now Abraham, he's like 75 at this time, and he obeys. He's like, all right, you want me to go? And he packs up his wife Sarai, his Lot, and their whole household, and they start going to Canaan. The same place that Moses was taking the children of Israel to. Now, as they're going, the thing here, Sarah is barren. She hasn't had kids. He's like 75 years old. They don't have any children. So when it says household, they just talk about him, his wife, and the servants. As time went on, God continued to repeat the promise. He says it to Abraham over and over again. Then in Genesis 15 is one of those times when he repeats the promise. God comes to Abraham and he says, don't be afraid, I am your shield and your great reward. By this time, though, Abraham is feeling himself a little bit. Abraham is like, I know you've been saying this for a minute now, but what can you actually give me? What can you actually give me? I don't have any children. I mean, anything that you give me that you think I'm going to love so much, my servants would have to inherit that. You keep talking about family and blessings and descendants. I don't have nobody. My wife can't get, and now he's getting real with God. He's like, listen, are you gaslighting me or what? He's basically saying, Lord, I hear you, but how can I know for no for no? How can I be sure that you're going to actually keep your word? Will you really birth a nation from an old man and a barren woman? For him, in his heart, the math wasn't mathing, and he was trying to ignore it, but you keep telling him over and over again. He's doing nothing but getting older. And the unknown that creates insecurity in our hearts. So, God, he doesn't say, man, I'm sick and tired of you questioning me. God then turns around and said, bet, let's go outside. Let's go outside. Come outside, let's talk. And he goes outside, he'd be like, look up. See all them stars out there? Start counting. He's like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And after a while, he's like, see how you can't number them? You're not going to be able to number how many descendants come from your bloodline. I'm going to do this. I'm telling you. This is the crux of our faith there, because then it says, Abraham believed him. He believed him, and it was counted to him as righteousness. And he was like, bet, Lord, yeah. And he started walking. He was like, oh, wait, hold on. No. How do I know for sure, though? And he's at it again. But this is us. This is us. Over and over and over again. We believe, but then we ask again. Lord, I trust you. I just need to be sure, though. Well, God hears this. He has a very, very interesting response to him, to his question of surety. God says, all right, bring me a heifer, a goat, a ram. Each of them got to be about 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. He's like, what? That's not what he says. Abraham was like, bet. And he goes and he gets all the pieces. He gets all the animals and he comes back. He gets all the animals, he cuts them in half, he lays them opposite sides of each other. God didn't tell him to do all of that. He cuts them in half, lays them opposite sides of each other. The blood is going down the aisle, running down the center, and he spends the night protecting them from animals, as if he knows what God is doing. You see, God was speaking in covenant language. The Lord met Abram's distrust with a covenant that he was familiar with. That's what he does inside of that moment. A sacred isle of blood, oath-making that was common to their time, where two people would give their word in an agreement, and then they would walk through the sacred isle of blood with the animal halves on each side, symbolizing oath, and their oath was, if I break my word, let me be ripped apart like these animals. So Abraham, he gathered all the ingredients. He prepared it, he cut them in half, because it was a covenant that he was used to. They did in their time. So as soon as the Lord started saying those things, Abraham was like, oh, I see what you're doing. Oh, I see how you're going to make sure that we seal this thing back. And he goes to put it all together. But that night, Abraham doesn't walk through the covenant. Instead, Yahweh, he knows that humans got trust issues. There's a reason why they don't trust each other. And he's not like, oh man, I'm going to trust y'all. He puts them to sleep. When he puts them to sleep, God manifests in two ways. A smoking fire pot, which is like a vessel, a cistern. Humans would often refer to as vessels and cisterns, though broken. And a blazing torch, a fire, a flame, like he presents himself to Moses later on, to represent both the human element and the God element. He stood in proxy for man. And the reason why he stood in proxy for man is so he could also stand in proxy when man breaks his part of the deal. Because he's all-knowing God. He's all truth. See, we humans, we swear oaths because we don't trust each other's words. We don't trust each other's words, so we sign contracts and we hire lawyers so that when you break your word, you can be held accountable. But God, he doesn't need that. He doesn't need that. He stoops down and he condescends to our weaknesses. That's what's happening in that moment. And he speaks in our language of insecurity so that we can be sure. What's one of those things you do? Bring that. That'll help. Bring those animals. Not because he needed that. But Abraham, you need these things? Look at verses 17 to 18. Because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, he confirmed it with an oath. God did this so that by two unchangeable things in which it was impossible for God to lie, we who have fled to take hold of the hope set before us may be greatly encouraged. See, the writer of Hebrews is amongst those who have fled to take hold of the hope set before them. He wasn't isolated from those that have fled. And this fleeing is connected to Abraham fleeing with his family to Canaan when God said go. It's connected to the fleeing of the children of Israel from their bondage in Egypt to the promised land. This was the New Testament saints fleeing the idols of empire and the old systems of their day to trust in Jesus. And it's connected to us. Fleeing the idols of our culture and our time today to stand on Jesus. That's the fleeing that he's talking about. Despite rejection, despite discouragement, despite confusion, tempting us to turn back over and over and over again. For you, he wants to give you this thing that you will be greatly encouraged. This thing that he's giving to the heirs of the promise. That's you. The heirs of the promise. Long time ago, when it was just Abraham and his barren wife, God was thinking about the heirs later on that would need something unchangeable to grab hold to, knowing your condition of life, that you're going to need this story to be reminded of his unchangeable nature. Two unchangeable things. His promise and his oath. Those are the two unchangeable things. Both are guaranteed by his nature. He is making a very simple argument. Both are guaranteed by his nature, which means it's impossible for him to lie. It's impossible. It's impossible for this thing to fly away. It's not in its nature. It's impossible for him to do it. It's not in his nature. Everything fades away. What's his nature? The nature of man has been distorted by the fall. We've created to reflect God's image and glory with truth. But now we live in a world of shadows and lies. The fallen part of our hearts, it craves deceit over and over and over again. But the God whose image and likeness we was created in, whose spirit lives inside of us, is the very essence of truth itself. Why the dichotomy? Regardless of how perilous and how confusing, how bleak the situation is, his nature cannot change. If there is anything that we can hold on to, it's his nature. It's who he is when we are confused. This is what Abraham held on to, because later on God would test Abraham. We see how Abraham responded then, but later on he would test Abraham. In Genesis 22, verses 1 through 19, you see Abraham, he was 75 when he first got the call and the promise. And then at least 7 different times, God restates the promise. It was 25 years later when the first fruits of the promise arrived, which was Isaac. And when God kept repeating the promise, he kept giving it more clarity each time. First it was just about nations, then it was like your offspring, then it was like Isaac by name, and he dropped Isaac's name, and then he's born. But in between all that time, all the thing that he was doing was sustaining hope across generations. They will always have the words to go back to. Isaac is born when Abraham is like 100 years old. And after all this waiting, and Abraham is like 100 years old, and Isaac is born. And some time passed. And Isaac is like, oh God, I knew it. And then God is like, all right, I want you to go sacrifice him. I want you to go sacrifice him. But this time we don't see him questioning with suspicion like before. Go sacrifice him. You're human just like I am. Imagine all the conflicts that comes up inside your heart comes up in his heart. And after waiting 25 years just for the first fruits of it. Despite all that, Abraham moves in obedience. In that text, you can go back and read it. We don't see him freezing, confused in fear like the children of Israel on their way to the promised land. We don't see that happening. And the reason why the writer of Hebrews is bringing this up is very important. In Hebrews 4, 1 through 2, it says this. Therefore, since the promise of entering the rest still stands, let us be careful that none of you be found to have fallen short of it. For we also have had the good news proclaimed to us, just as they did, but the message they heard was of no value to them because they did not share the faith of those who obeyed. There was a distinct difference. Those who refused to follow in fear and disobedience, they weren't walking in the faith that Abraham was walking in. There's a difference there. They had placed their faith in systems. When they were with Moses, it seemed like the systems weren't working, so they wanted to go back to Egypt systems. Now in the face of persecution, they want to go back to the Mosaic system. You look back to our time, today in our time, many people are hoping in governmental systems, hoping in systems set up by older church traditions, but the faith Yahweh has given to us is rooted in him himself. That's the thing that you got to know and understand, specifically him. His very person, his very character, his very nature itself with the people who know him and discern him. You see, God had given Abraham a challenge, and Abraham, he had learned something different over the years. He had learned something. He had stumbled and fell many times. He tried to accomplish God's plan on his own strength, and a lot of times, and he got scarred by it. Despite his own foolishness, in all of that, God kept him. So this time he rises up in obedience. He gets all the supplies for the sacrifice, and he starts heading to the mountain with Isaac. But as he's going to the mountain with Isaac, he just gets up, get everything together. You don't see a hesitation. You don't see no, Lord, what are you doing? He gathers everything together, and he's heading. But what stands out to me is the dialogue. As he's walking with the servants, and the servant's like, yo, what's good? And he's like, yo, me and the boy, we're about to go sacrifice and worship, and then we're going to come back. Okay. And then him and the boy is working. Him and Isaac are going. And Isaac's like, yo, Dad, I know we got the wood, and I know we got all the other stuff. I don't see the lamb, though. Where's it at? And Isaac and Abraham is like, oh, God is going to provide the lamb. I remember when I first read that earlier on in my faith, I thought to myself, dang, Abraham has no idea how to tell Isaac the truth right now. He is so scared he can't tell Isaac the truth. But I realize now that wasn't the case. It wasn't that he was afraid and he was just keeping truth away from Isaac. He was anchored in something. Something else was anchoring him very, 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 very hard and deep. He didn't know the details just like before, but he does know the character of God. It doesn't make sense. Just like before, all the same questions that go through your mind that probably went inside his mind too. But I trust your character, Lord. Here's what I do know. Whatever doesn't make sense to me, you won't contradict you. Here's what I do know. I don't know how it all makes sense, but here's what I do know. Listen, you're the one that said that you were going to blast and promise and do all these things. And I know walking this thing out looks like it's going to cancel that out, but you told me to do this too. I don't know all the elements. What I do know is your character. This is what's in his mind. When he's telling his servants, yo, me and my son, we're about to go worship and come back. Because I know his character. He tells the son, the Lord is going to provide. He actually knows the Lord is going to provide. And I'm just going to be obedient all the way to the end. God is not a man that he should lie. He's learned this. Abraham, he's obedient to the very end with a crazy type faith. I mean, he's going to the end. He raises the knife. He's about to sacrifice. He's like, Lord, are you going to step in any minute now? And on the mountain, at the last second, God stops his hand. He provides a ram in a thicket, just like Abraham knew God was going to provide. See, the thing is that we need to grasp is that Abraham was anchored by two unchangeable things. Sometimes when life is complicated, you got to simplify things. When everything else gets hectic, the writer of Hebrews wants you to know those same two unchangeable things. Look at me at verses 19 to 20. We have this as a sure and steadfast anchor for the soul. A hope that enters into the inner place behind the curtain, where Jesus has gone as a forerunner on our behalf. having become a high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. You see, priests, they would represent the people to God. They would make sacrifices for the people's sin to God. The people that was considered unclean, and they was kept separated from God. So they would send a priest in. The high priest would go behind the curtain, but the people, they couldn't go. He was unseen. He would go into the unseen realm. It was behind the curtain. But knowing the priest was in there on their behalf was supposed to give them comfort. An anchor goes down in the deep, unseen realm of the ocean, and it holds you steady from drifting away. If you are on a ship and you're looking at that ship, maybe you see the boat on the water and you see the waves, but you don't see what's holding it steady. You don't see why that ship doesn't just drift away. The anchor goes down into the deep, into what's unseen. But the thing is, you know what the anchor is doing, though. If you're on a ship, you know what goes down into the deep, into the unseen. And the anchor locks onto solid rock, debris. You know it's going down to latch on. What makes the anchor worth it, it has to be both connected to you and connected to the deep at the same time. You with an anchor that goes beyond what you can see, beyond what you can understand, beyond what you can explain, but you know the anchor is there and it's attached to you, holding you. And you don't got to figure out all the answers all the time. The truth of God's unchanging nature was the anchor in the depths of Abraham's soul. It meant that God contradicting himself was an impossibility. He didn't have to figure it out. You don't have to solve the problem, you just need to know the anchor. And on the outside, Abraham looks like a ship steadied on the ocean. You don't see him complaining. You don't see him going after things. He's anchored. The thing for us this morning is to know that anchor, that oath, that word, and put on flesh. It walked with us. Because we are untrustworthy, it was bloodied up for us, like the pieces, the halves. We take communion over and over and over again, remembering the bloody reality of a body ripped up for us, that resurrected and went into the holies of holies. The difference between the other priests, they went into the holies of holies disconnected. But our Lord took you and brought you into him, and then goes into the holies of holies